You know, when I look at these markings, it looks to me like they went straight across with the hairline. You know, we often talk about not taking a hairline straight across because the thing is, it might look good when you're, you know, in your 20s, early 30s, but how will that look when you're in your 60s, 70s? You know, we do want to think ahead. And there's also
All right, wait. So real quick, let's talk about that real quick because with me and my own like hair, I already got the hair trans. I mean the SMP, right? So the SMP means that they're going to just follow my actual hairline, right? But when I got the SMP, I took time to think. I was like, yo, I don't want it to be too low. Like I don't want my SMP to be too low to where you have to take the grafts. Remember we talked about with the last reaction, like you taking the grafts out the back and put them in the front. So if I go too low, then you're going to have to take a lot of grafts from my back in order to fill the front, and you got to feel even more because I'm going lower than where my hair actually starts growing at, which my hair, it starts growing like right there. Yeah, like right there, which is actually crazy to even think about. So my hair started growing like right there. Yeah, my hair started growing like right there. Yo, what's going on, Big Stepper? So I came across this video a couple of weeks ago. It's a Dr. Gary Linkov. He's an actual hair surgeon, plastic surgeon out of New York, and he's reviewing another creator who got their hair transplant done over in Turkey. So for you, the viewer watching this, this is twofold. Two things you can take away from this. First, big thing, right? I'm a person looking to get a hair transplant. So maybe if you're looking to get a hair transplant, or if you've been doing your research, you're probably trying to watch it from my perspective versus watching it from the person who got the hair transplant and also the doctor who could be biased, right? And that's the second thing. Dr. Gary Linkov, he's a great content, you know what I'm saying? Makes great content, but naturally he's most likely going to be a little bit biased towards getting your surgery done in the United States since he has a United States clinic. So you're watching it from an unbiased perspective, being my perspective. So you know, without me talking too much, let's go ahead and hop right into Dr. Gary Linkov reacting to I went to Turkey for a hair transplant by another creator. All right, we're about to hop into it right now.
let's react to I Went to Turkey for a Hair Transplant by Teaching Men's Fashion.
I went to Turkey for my brother's hair transplant, and in today's video, I'm gonna go through the exact cost of it. I'm gonna walk you through exactly how the procedure goes. And finally, since this happened over 3 months ago, you're gonna get to see the exact results you can achieve from a hair transplant.
3 months is not going to give you a final result. That's usually when the transplanted hair starts to come in. So this shouldn't be the final result if it's truly been 3 months from surgery. Final result can take a year to 18 months.
You ready to show this? Show the hair transplant?
I think so. I think I'm ready to do this.
So much suspense.
So it all started from where I live in Manhattan.
Oh, look at this. He's our neighbor.
From there, we took a direct flight from JFK, New York to Istanbul, Turkey, which is a 12-hour trip. Once we arrived at Turkey, we were picked up in a black Sprinter van by 2 individuals. These guys were extremely nice. They're like family oriented, super nice, always smiling.
Come on, just like everyone in New York City.
That's what I said, man. That's a long ride. And of course, you know, everybody can be smiling, and at least they pick you up with some nice stuff when you get there. But that's a long time to be getting a hair transplant, right? Even the brother's like, it's what he said, 12-hour flight or something. I don't know.
You're right.
Here's the interesting part about getting a hair transplant in Turkey versus one in America.
Remember that it's not just about choosing the country where you're going to get the surgery done. It's about choosing a specific clinic, a specific surgeon who's going to be doing your transplant. Oftentimes, I feel like that gets lost in videos like this. It's trying to put one country against another, when in reality, it just comes down to the surgeon who's, you know, doing your surgery, and then the team that they're working with. At the end of the day is the most important thing.
We didn't go straight to the clinic.
And the price, Dr. Gary. And the price. But he is right about you know, especially like this is like YouTube content, right? But watching this guy made like, I guess like a mini documentary for his hair thing, which is really cool. You know what I'm saying? I get it because you're really taking the viewer into it. But also who's actually doing it is what matters, right? Like who's actually doing, because a lot of times, guys, when you go over to Turkey, when you go to Turkey, the actual doctor is not doing the hair transplant. I found that out during my research. Like the actual doctor is not the one that's doing the hair transplant. It's most likely going to be his nurses or his other people that's involved with like the actual process. You'll just meet with the doctor if you are lucky to meet with the doctor, or if they make you a priority enough. But other than that, it's the actual nurses that's doing the hair transplant. Versus a lot of times in the US anyway, it's like the actual doctor that you meet with is going to be the actual doctor doing the hair transplant. So that's something you want to watch out for if you go to Turkey. But
instead, we just explored Turkey, which is a beautiful city full of history, full of amazing architecture, and the best part, amazing food. My bro's gonna get a hair transplant, but before that, we're gonna get to explore the city.
Little tour.
Little tour.
Yeah, a little tired, but a little tour.
I feel like some people do like to travel out of the country for surgery because of this, because they do get to explore a new place and it's kind of combining a vacation potentially with the surgery. So I get the appeal of that. So I'm looking at his brother and
that is a main thing as far as even with me. Like I looked into going to Turkey. It's like I said, that's a long plane ride, right? So if you're about to travel 12 hours in a plane, you want to be making the most out of that time. At least that's the way I looked at it. So me going to Turkey, if I go to Turkey to get a hair transplant, I've already planned, like I would have to be there for at least 7 days, right? For me to feel like, I got the procedure done, but also, I healed up enough to where I feel comfortable getting back on there. But also I was able to, experience the area. Like I don't go to Turkey often. So if I might just go for 3 days, get the hair transplant, and then, be on my way the 2 days after, that don't make sense. Versus me, actually, and enjoying the culture, maybe eating some good food or something. So that's something to think about. That's why I actually do like when I watch these videos and they actually giving you, what is it to do in the actual area, right? But yeah, this the guy that's getting a hair transplant right here, y'all. Like, bro, he getting a hair transplant. Does he even need a hair transplant? This is crazy. I mean, I guess it can always get better. I guess I don't know. Looks good though.
his hair looks really good. So I'm not really sure what the plan is for surgery, but we'll see what they come up with.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I was nervous, all right?
You know, when I look at these markings, it looks to me like they went straight across with the hairline. You know, we often talk about not taking a hairline straight across, because the thing is, it might look good when you're, in your 20s, early 30s, but how will that look when you're in your 60s, 70s? You know, we do want to think ahead. And there's also the potential for additional hair loss. And we don't want to start too low and too straight across, because that gives a much more juvenile appearance to the hairline. But it looks to me, at least from this angle, and it could look different potentially as we'll see him from the front, but from this profile view, it does appear like they kind of squared off the hairline in a fairly low position.
I'm not big into surgery.
Wait. So real quick, let's talk about that real quick, because with me and my own hair, I already got the the SMP, right? So the SMP means that they're going to just follow my actual hairline, right? But when I got the SMP, I took time to think. I was like, yo, I don't want it to be too low. Like, I don't want my SMP to be too low to where you have to take the grafts. Remember, we talked about with the last reaction, like you take the grafts out the back and put them in the front. So if I go too low, then you're going to have to take a lot of grafts from my back in order to fill the front. And you got to feel even more because I'm going lower than where my hair actually starts growing at, which my hair, it starts growing like right there. Yeah, like right there, which is actually crazy to even think about. So my hair started growing like right there. I've thought about that, and I've actually talked to certain clinics. Like I told you guys, there was one clinic I went to that just gave me I was getting estimates as far as the consultations to get, the hair transplant done. And they told me basically I don't have enough grafts in my donor that they feel comfortable. I only grew my hair out for like 3 weeks for them to actually see it. So that's another story for another day. But basically I grew my hair out so they can actually see, how much my donor area is and how much area is to fill in. So yeah, getting the hairline low, but I got my ideology on that is it's really two different things. For one, it's like, yo, you're getting your hairline low. Like I said, in your 20s, it could be good. But if you're trying to be in your 60s, it's like, bro, in my 60s, I don't even care about having hair at that point. Or maybe technology is caught up by then and I can just, use armpit hair or use somebody else's hair. Because right now it's crazy. You can't even use somebody else's hair to put it in your head. It has to be your hair, or your body your body rejects it. Your body rejects anybody else's hair. I did not know that. It's crazy. But maybe they'll create some type of technology that, that allows our body to accept other people's hair. Right now, you can't. So my thing is, if you're going to be in your 20s, that's why I said maybe at 22 is a little bit early. But if you're in your late 20s to, your early 40s, bro, you might as well live it up. Like, live it up. Get your hairline as straight as you want it, as low as you want it. Because, it's not no telling what will happen once you get 50 or 60. But once you're 50 or 60, who cares, right? Like, the time that you want hair is in your 20s, your 30s, and, ideally even your 40s. But And the bottom line is, once you're 60 years old, who cares? So I think get your hairline as low as you want. But if you're like at 22, then you might want to think about it. Like if I would have got my hair transplant when I first started losing hair, I would have lost more hair since then. So I would have had to go back for another hair transplant if I wanted to keep it, looking how I wanted it to look. So that's why it's like, it's good to kind of wait a little bit, because that way you kind of it gets, ideally it gets worse, quote unquote, but it develops into what it's going to be, right? Like it can't get much worse is the idea that I'm thinking, right? But that's just me and my own strategy with my own hair. Everybody else got their own strategy with their own hair and your own hair loss pattern. But I just wanted to give a little insight on that, because that is something that you hear all the time. Don't go too low. Don't go too low. But at the same time, if you're saying don't go too low because this has to last your whole life, it's like it really don't have to last your whole life, yeah, it doesn't have to last your whole life. You can decide, okay, I'm 60 years old now. Let me just start cutting it off instead of getting another hair transplant. Instead of getting another hair transplant at 60 years old. That'd be wild to get a hair transplant at 60, right? All right, let's hop back into it.
A little scared of them. I'm a big boy, but I'm still a little scared of surgeries.
Yeah, most guys who come in for a hair transplant, that's the first and sometimes only, cosmetic type of surgery that they've had. So it's not like they've been through a whole lot of other procedures, and many of them come in, worried and unsure exactly what will take place.
It's a clean new facility, which helps ease the nerves a bit. It was state of the art.
They're using this type of infrared device to be able to exactly pinpoint, where they want to draw the hairline. The truth is this, that there is asymmetry to the face, and one side is never the same as the other side. Measurements are fine. These types of devices are fine. But at the end of the day, you really need to use an artistic eye to be able to see how to properly frame the face and how to make the new hairline blend seamlessly with the hair that's around it. And
all right, I ain't gonna talk y'all head off, but that's what y'all here for. So check this out. As far as framing the face and having an artistic eye, one big thing with me was when I got it done by Taylor Perry, a great artist from the standpoint of SMP. But it's like that's an art, because it's an illusion that you're creating when it comes to SMP. That said, I've seen some people who've gotten hair transplants done, but the person who did their hairline, it doesn't look right. Like it just doesn't look right. Like I'm thankful, I can sit back and say, like, with an unbiased opinion, I have a normal looking hairline, right? Like when I say normal looking, it doesn't look quote unquote fake. Like if I didn't tell you if it was SMP, most people don't know, right? That said, I've seen some people with SMP that it looks like it was drawn on. Like that's what it looks like. I've seen people that've gotten a hair transplant that looks like, who made your hair. Like if I was going to choose and pay to make a hairline, I wouldn't pay to make it like that. Like that's what I've seen. So the thing about getting SMP done before you get a hair transplant, what I'm saying is, if you're working with an actual artist, then ideas, they're going to have your hairline good enough so that the surgeon, all they got to do is just trace it. So you ain't got to go through all the other little stuff and nothing like that. Surgeon just traces the hairline when you got an SMP done.
that's something that no device out there can give you an answer to. You just have to have the vision for it. And you can see the exact markings. And as I was suspecting from the profile view, when I look at him from the 3/4 view, there is a straight across kind of element to his hairline. It doesn't look like they've left him with too much frontotemporal recession, which again, some people, that's their preference. In terms of the temples, it looks...
Another thing too, the guy flat out told me, he said he'll have to use 1,000 grafts just to cover my sides. He's like, just to cover your sides and make it look natural, we're gonna have to use 1,000 grafts just for that. That was the guy who declined me. And I'm gonna give you guys deep dives on these clinics that, accepted me, declined me, how much they quoted me for, all that. So, subscribe to see that. But at the same time, yeah, they said 1,000 grafts just to cover the side, bro. So you see, I got like all this space that needs to be filled, but 1,000 just for the side sounded crazy to me. I'm like, that sounds crazy. Like, what do you mean 1,000 grafts just to cover the size? So, if I'm doing 4,000 grafts in a session, 5,000 grafts in a session, a quarter of it's already gone. So that's a lot.
It's like they're accentuating the temple some. It's a fairly low hairline that they're giving him. His hair even now looks quite good, so they're going even lower. And it would be interesting to also see the horizontal thirds as far as measurements to make sure that the top third is not too short relative to his middle third and lower third. That's an important measure to do when you're trying to decide where to place the hairline, especially if there's a risk of potentially it being too low.
I got a little emotional at this point because I wanted to get down and see how my brother was feeling and why was he going through this, right? Why was he actually going to go through the procedure?
Well, it makes a good YouTube video. That might be one reason.
I'm not the type of guy that will do surgery yet, but you know, I'm 35. All right. Losing a little bit of hair right here, so you know I have to do what I have to do.
You can see it's a modern facility, and the best part is everything's gonna be seamless.
Yeah.
I don't think you should.
Us up, hotel, to here, back to the hotel after.
Yep.
So amazing.
The most important thing when it comes to a hair transplant is having the proper strategy. You know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with your, say, hairline or any other part of hair restoration? So, you know, these other things, you know, the name of the place, the reputation, how fancy the space is, all of that is in a way kind of a distraction, in my opinion. Proper strategy can occur in Turkey. It can occur in the United States, any other place. Oftentimes, though, I feel like there isn't enough emphasis on like, what's the big picture? Not just the 1 year plan, what's like the 20-year, 30-year plan for you to sustain your hair and also to have it look as best and as natural as it can be. It's not that hard to move some grafts around, but to have a proper strategy for what your plan is, that takes a bit more skill and experience, really talking to patients and figuring things out together.
We went into a pre-surgery room where he could have his first consultation with a doctor.
So I think the initial consultation hopefully took place, you know, before he ever got to Turkey, and not just with the consultant who may or may not have been a doctor, but with the actual surgeon who'd be performing his procedure. I've heard that that's not always the case. Sometimes people fly over and then they finally meet the doctor, you know, day of if they're lucky. And that to me can be problematic. I think you really should meet the exact surgeon who's doing your surgery way in advance, you know, at the initial consultation, ideally.
His hairline.
Yo, so I'm gonna say something here, but I ain't gonna say too much, right? Because I got more to show y'all at a later time. But what I'm gonna say is he basically just said what I said earlier, right? A lot of times when it comes to Turkey hair clinics, you're not talking to or meeting the surgeon that you're going to be doing, that's going to be doing the hair. Like you will talk to somebody, that's not going to be the person that's doing it. I'll give you a brief overview on how the process works when you're in the United States and you're going overseas to get a hair transplant. Briefly, I'll tell you how it works. You're going to message a clinic and it's going to be through WhatsApp. So you're going to be messaged in a clinic through WhatsApp. They're going to ask you to send pictures of your hair and then you'll get quoted. They'll quote you from the pictures that you send as far as like how much that it'll cost and how many grafts that you're going to require. So from there, you get those grafts and you get the cost and the quotes. And then, like you said, the consultant. And this is why I'm coming from a third party point of view, because you can tell him being a plastic surgeon or a cosmetic surgeon himself in the United States, he was trying not to sound biased, but because you can kind of tell how he was saying it right there. But the reality is, bro, you really like, that's what had me stop. Because I looked and did other research with other people, and they're saying that, you know, they were talking with one person online or as far as on WhatsApp, but then they get there, that person on WhatsApp that they're talking to don't even have the conversation down. That person is not available. And you're just now meeting the person and going for your initial consultation. Once you get there, there's so many different variables that can go on from your initial consultation to the actual surgery being done, because it's your consultation in person. So yeah, you want to have that ideally with the person that's doing your hair transplant, but there are some caveats to that, even from him talking, right? It's kind of funny him saying that. But yeah, you really would like to do that, because think about it. Why would you get the initial consultation done the same day you're about to get the surgery done? Like that, it doesn't make sense. That's what, like, Brett, it doesn't make sense. It makes sense if you just like, I'm saving money, and they've already done it so many times before, so you know they're not gonna mess up, right? Like they always do good, because you don't really hear about people messing up. So it's like, this is what they always do. I'm gonna just do it because they always do it. But at the same time, that doesn't make it right. Or if it makes it right for you, it doesn't give me personally enough peace of mind to be like, all right, I'm about to meet with you, initial consultation, and then boom, we having a surgery right there. Doesn't make sense. And then you're not talking with this person the entire time. And then oftentimes the doctor can just come in the room and just do a little something and then leave out, but you're not even meeting with them and coming up with, like you said, an actual game plan, an actual strategy. Let's hop back into it. But I certainly agree. You know, you ideally you want to talk to the person that's doing it before you drive or before you fly 12 hours, right?
Was receding. And this is normal for most men because according to a study, up to 50% of men will lose considerable amount of hair in this front area of their forehead.
Yeah, and it's not just at the hairline. Plenty of men lose hair in the frontal scalp, mid-scalp, crown. You know, that whole DHT sensitive zone that we talk about.
After the consultation, the doctor then started examining this area of Juan's hair to see if there were any small hairs left in the areas where Juan was losing it. For Juan, there were still small hairs that couldn't be seen by the naked eye in this area, which this is great news because what the doctor told us is that after procedure, you can improve the benefits of the hair transplant by using topical medication like finasteride and minoxidil.
So I'm glad that the clinic at least brought up these medical therapies that we talk about all the time on the channel. Keep in mind that finasteride and minoxidil, while they are available as topicals, they're much more effective and more potent as pills, and we have the pills available at the feelconfident.com website. We also have topical finasteride available, but the oral form is going to be more potent and more effective for your hair. But the flip side of that is that it carries more side effects, even though for most people at the standard dosages, they do quite well with little to no side effects. So that's just something to keep in mind.
These are the two ingredients that I always recommend you guys use. For example, most of you, if you want the same results, but maybe can't afford.
You know, I'm not gonna go too much into it because I realize I've been pausing a lot, but you know, it's up to you if you like to have the finasteride, minoxidil. It's up to you. You know, everybody got their own route. I can say I have not taken anything orally, but I did take minoxidil and I put it on my hair when I was initially losing my hair, and I feel like that exacerbated the process for me. But everybody got their own route, so there's just something to consider.
The hair transplant. Using these two can save your hairline.
He's right about that. The medical therapy is very important, but in a way it's accomplishing two different things. The medical therapy is there to protect the hair that you have and to create that stable foundation. Then you can come in with surgery to do things like put a lot more hair in an area that's been heavily depleted over time, and to potentially put hair where there's never been hair. Some people have always had a high hairline and that has bothered them. That's where the transplant comes in. So they are complementary type of treatments for hair restoration.
If you don't know how a hair transplant works, essentially what they do is that they'll take a hair follicle out from an area where you have a lot of hair.
So we take out what's called grafts, right? So there's two ways to remove the hair. There's FUT, where we cut out a strip. That is a procedure that's still done today. However, it's fallen out of favor for many men because men are trying to avoid that linear scar often so that they can wear their hair shorter. And so now FUE, or follicular unit extraction, is becoming more popular, and that is where we're removing individual grafts. So it's not necessarily one follicle, it's an actual graft, which is a family of hairs or a family of follicles. Sometimes that could be single hair graft, or most often it's at least a 2-hair graft.
Most of the time, doctors will take hair from the back of your head. For Juan, they were going to transplant 4,000 hair follicles.
Okay, so this is something that you need to be careful with. Some clinics will quote you for the number of grafts. Remember, each graft has an average of 2 follicles, and some clinics will tell you the number of follicles. So don't be fooled by that, okay? So 4,000 follicles actually equates to about 2,000 grafts.
Yo, that's actually good because I didn't even recognize that. So this is a good game.
If he's reporting this accurately. So make sure to ask for the semantics. Are they talking about grafts or are they talking about follicles? And also keep in mind that there's a limit to how many grafts you have in the back and the sides of your head before the area starts to look more depleted. So in someone with a very strong donor area for FUE surgery, you're looking at on average about maybe 6,000, maybe up to 7,000 grafts before the area starts to look much thinner. So there really is a limit. Let's say this is actually grafts and not follicles. So 4,000, they're taking more than half of your donor supply and placing it right here. But now imagine what happens if he starts to thin out. Let's say he's not on medical therapy and 10 years, 5 years go by, 10 years go by. Now he's lost a lot more hair. Where are you going to get that hair? You're going to go back there, right? But you've already exhausted more than half for the initial procedure, and now you have a lot more area to cover, and eventually you run out of grafts. So that's where the strategy, the upfront strategy, becomes super super important.
Now, here's where it gets good. This is the
Real quick. So, like I said, I've been getting quoted for different, hair stuff. They quoted me 6,000 grafts, and he just said that if you get 6 to 7,000 grafts, can deplete your entire donor area. I got quoted by a clinic in Turkey, which I said I'll go a deep dive in some other time, but I got quoted 6,000 grafts. So just think about that, 6,000 grafts. And they were going to do it all in one setting, and it didn't sit right with me. So I'll leave it there though.
difference between a good facility and a bad facility, because a second doctor stepped in, which is more focused on aesthetics. He then came in to size up Juan's head to be able to draw a natural hairline.
Okay, so you don't need two surgeons to do a hair transplant. Ideally, you have one surgeon who understands the technicalities of where you get the grafts and also the artistic eye for creating a natural hairline. So that is not the distinguishing factor between a good clinic and a clinic that's subpar, right? Ideally, the head surgeon should have both of those abilities.
But what's important here is that they made the hairline look natural instead of making it look super straight, which is where it looks a little funny.
So this is what I was talking about before, and he's bringing this up as far as not making it super straight. I think that this is already quite straight. I understand that there's a little bit of frontotemporal recession that they've kept, and I'm happy about that. But this is still a fairly straight configuration to the hairline. Some patients do want this, so I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but it's something to consider that there is a more recessed version of this type of hairline that may have been possible as well, but maybe the patient wanted it to be a bit more on the straight side. Also, when I look at the markings there, it doesn't look like there's enough space to fit 4,000 grafts. I don't know how they would even come close to that. In terms of how many grafts you can fit into an area like that, especially if you're doing the temples, you can start to approach numbers of about maybe 2,000 grafts. So when he said 4,000 follicles, which would be 2,000 grafts, then yeah, that is believable. It's still a lot of grafts, but that is possible, I think, to squeeze into an area like this.
Once all that was done, they asked Juan if he was happy with the hairline. He said it was good, and then the doctor explained what the procedure would look like. They also explained a key point of a hair transplant, where they were not only going to treat the area that had no hair, they were actually going to push up a little bit into the area that had some hair.
I see what they're doing here. They're, spreading the grafts into regions where he already has pretty good hair, just in case he were to lose it. Some of the risks of doing it this way is that you can cause more significant shock loss. So going in and traumatizing an area that already has a lot of hair can actually cause some degree of hair fallout in that zone, and that can be temporary or it can be more permanent, especially if you're not on medical therapy. Then it might be more permanent because you're essentially causing local trauma in that zone. So you do want to do some degree of blending into the existing region that has hair, but this to me is a bit more extensive of a blend than I usually do.
After this, the doctor explained the procedure takes about 6 hours, and if Juan wanted, he could take sedation medication where he could still stay awake, but the best part is that you don't feel the pain.
Even if you're taking the medication, which may have been something like a Valium or an Ambien, you're not fully out, right? So you still feel some of the discomfort that comes with the numbing shots, right? It's not like it completely, there's zero pain. You still feel something, and then once it's numb from the numbing shots, then you should be pretty good to go.
Now, here is the
You have to sit down for 6 hours plus to get a hair transplant. Like I told you guys, you sitting down 6 hours plus to get a hair transplant. However, I got quoted 6,000 grafts. They told me that it was going to take about 10 hours to do that procedure. I was like, bro, you like 10 hours to do a procedure? That means I'm just sitting there like this for 10 hours straight. Can you imagine just sitting there? You awake the whole time. Because like I imagine you can't like move your head, like, because if you're going to fall asleep, you're gonna be moving your head or something. So if you you getting a hair transplant for 10 hours. They were gonna do it 6,000 grafts all in one session. I was gonna be up for 10 hours. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I still can't, to be real with you. Like that's one of them things. Like if I'm about to sit there for 10 hours, like 10, and I'm up. I gotta stay awake the whole time. I mean, man, I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, so they say 6 hours, but again, his was only 2,000 grafts, right? And they're saying just like right in the front area for him. Mine was going to be like like all that type stuff. Like it's gonna be a lot. So it made sense when they said 10 hours. She was like, it'll be like 10 to 12 hours. I'm like 10, and she was like, it but likely 10 hours. I'm like, but said 10 to 12 hours, bro. Come on, man. And then it makes you wonder, like, I know you got to get tired, like as far as working, but that's why I've done my research. And they didn't really tell me this, but doing my research, I understood that there's multiple different surgeons that's coming in because you're getting a hand. If I get like the hand pick method, meaning that they're individually picking out 6,000 grafts from the back of my head, and they have to individually place 6,000 grafts in the back of my head. So the idea is that you do it this way because it's called like the DHI method. You do it this way because it's supposed to be more precise because they're doing it with their hand versus doing it with a machine. However, I'm like, bro, your hand is going to be falling off after 6. You telling me you go to 12 hours? So there has to be multiple surgeons and multiple nurses and stuff, especially when you're in places like Turkey where they're getting multiple people a day. But yeah, so this is just something to think about. Like I said, 6 hours for that. Mine was going to be like 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours.
Timeline for a hair transplant. Once you get your hair transplant, all those follicles you just transplanted, they will fall out in 2 months. So in 2 months, it's called the shedding period.
Some people see the fallout happen closer to 5-6 weeks, and other people much earlier.
They would then start to regrow immediately between months 3 to 6, which is where Juan is at now. He is about 4 months post-surgery, and his hairline looks phenomenal. And your final hairline is gonna come in 12 to 15 months after procedure. From there, we went to my favorite part. I got to shave my bro's head.
That's a pretty accurate depiction of the recovery process. So many clinics will shave the entire head once the markings are complete. There are ways, however, of doing no shave FUE, and that can apply to the donor area, and it can also apply to the recipient area, and we've talked about that in other videos. And in my clinic, I offer no shave FUE up to about 1,500-1,600 grafts because it's a more labor-intensive, time-consuming process. And at the recipient area, we're able to work around the existing hair most of the time without having to shave all of this. But there are cases where we highly recommend to shave so that we can get even more accurate with our graft placement.
And as you can see, it's a significant amount of coverage.
So it looks like they marked out the temples, but I'm not sure exactly if they plan on grafting the temples at all. It looks like they've just basically marked where they are. I'm not sure if they're gonna actually go in there with grafts. We'll have to see.
The procedure ended up being around 7 hours to transplant 4,000 hair grafts.
So they really did go for 4,000 grafts. And in my opinion, that's way too many grafts for the area that was being transplanted. I don't feel like they had to go.
Dude, that's way, way, way too many grafts. 4,000 grafts for basically from here to basically right there, right? And they didn't even do the whole thing because they went down a little bit. So 4,000 grafts, mind you, I told you my hair starts growing like right here. This is where my hair starts growing up. So that means like if I just needed to get a hair, they did 4,000 grafts just for this little section. I'm telling you that my hair has to be like, it starts from, you guys will see it eventually, but it starts from like right there to the point they start filling the grafts in. This grows in pretty good. And also the back, thankfully, grows in pretty good. So yeah, they did 4,000. And that's the thing about these turkey hair clinics, man. Sometimes what I'm noticing by looking at other people, sometimes like they're just like quoting you max grafts. And that's why it kind of made me be a little bit hesitant as far as getting my hair transplant done with the clinic I was thinking about, because I understood just looking at other creators, like, yo, they just quote you max grafts. Like you're telling me 6,000, and that's like you must have 6,000 grafts your whole entire life. Or if you at least give it a couple of years before you get, if you get 4,000 done, you want to give it a few years before you go back and get, more done. At least a year. But that said, yeah, 4,000 for that little area, I think that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And that's the thing. Like I said, you out there, looking for hair clinics and stuff, don't just take what they say as the golden rule, especially if you're looking in Turkey or even anywhere for real. But I just say especially Turkey, because like it seems like they just want you to come out there. Like Yeah, we go do this. No problem. No problem, my friend. No problem. No problem, my friend. Yes, my friend. Yes, brother. Yes, brother. Like, come on, bro. Hit me with this brother and my friend. Like, I don't even know you like that. And don't be telling me something that it's like 4,000 grafts for one area when in reality you're just trying to get the most amount of money for that time. So yeah, certainly go with a reputable clinic, but also make sure that you're sitting and you're meeting and fully understanding and doing your own research. And don't just say like, okay, this doctor told me this, so it must be true. Or I must have to get it. Get a few different opinions. Like that's what I've done so far. I've compared opinion and the different opinions that I've gotten from other people made me realize that yo, this person's tripping, or that person's pretty, close to it, or this person, I'm able to figure out what's right or what sounds more right based on what everybody is saying and not formulating my own opinion, right? All right, let's finish this off.
As far back as they did, and at that degree of density, while that is good density, you've now exhausted more than 50% of your donor supply. And now imagine that area is still quite a small area relative to the full potential loss that he could experience back to the crown, and you just won't have enough grafts to fill that area in. And if all that he's left with is this strip, it's not going to look great overall down the road. So you have to be careful with graft management over time. And so I do believe in doing the least amount of grafts necessary to still create a great result. So for a case like his, if we even went that low as far as the hairline design goes, I think the most I would have done would be up to maybe 2,000 grafts. And even then, that's kind of pushing it. So, 4,000 grafts, in my opinion, here was a bit much.
After what felt quite like an eternity, he finally came out. I got to talk to him. He was fully conscious after the surgery.
I'm looking here, and it doesn't seem like they actually grafted the temples. They went at the hairline, and then they curved around that frontotemporal angle, and then they kind of stopped there. So that's what I was expecting them to do based on their markings.
See, and that's the thing, guys. Like I said, with me, the temples, they're telling me that it'll be 500 each side just to do the temples, right? So just to do this little area is going to be 500 grafts on each side just to do this area on both sides. And I just feel like that don't make sense, right? It have to be at least 500 together because all they would need to really, the thing is though, my hair stops growing like right there, right? So that means they actually would have to do all this. Now think about it, it have to be like all that. Okay, that actually does make sense. So yeah, they want 500 grafts on me each side. But now that I think about it, actually does make sense because like I said, my hair, it stops growing right there. And that's the people that declined me. They said the reason they were declining me is because I had these sides done. It's like if you didn't have these sides done, you'll be fine. But with you having the sides done, we don't want to lie to you because we can't guarantee it. But yeah, I'm actually looking at it and it's making sense now because you see this guy. You can tell like with him and that little area right there, he just like stop it right there. So they don't drop down. Like with me, it's like basically right there. Basically, yeah, like right there. I would need all of that all the way down on both sides. So I guess that might be 500 grafts each side. That makes sense. All right.
But this kind of confirms it.
The interesting part is after just one night of rest, he was completely back to normal the next day.
I actually had a bit of a headache last night.
Some clinics will give you this kind of headband to try to keep the swelling out. The truth is that the swelling will still descend down the face in the first week. My thought on it is that it increases the risk of potentially rubbing a graft out because he may, inadvertently bump up the headband and then look how close the grafts are to it. So I prefer not to leave anything on the forehead for patients, and they do just fine. Also, even though he may look absolutely fine the day after, the swelling takes about 2 to 3 days to build up, and then over the next 4 or 5 days, the swelling is coming down the face and then it dissipates. So you could look great the following day, but then several days after that, you can start to look more swollen.
In fact, we were on a flight back home that same day. That next day after surgery, we were already going back home. He was feeling good.
Most patients who visit us from other states, other countries, find that it's helpful for them to stay an additional night, so 2 nights post-op before they fly back. They just feel much more comfortable for the travels back.
One spent a total of
$6,000.
$6,000.
All right, so that's his price, $6,190, right? This video came out a few months ago. I think the main video came out like last year. So That's his price. But now I want to just touch on something real quick, and we want to unpack the price. But want to touch on this. He said that he went the next day home, and I've read different things. I looked at different creators. You know, they're coming from Turkey, getting their hair transplant. Some people say they feel fine going back, leaving out that next day. I did see some people, I guess, depending on the clinic you go to, they have like a follow-up appointment with you that next day. So they actually do recommend you stand for at least another day after your surgery. But for me, yeah, leaving the next day right after I do that, I mean, good for him that he was able to do that. But me, I wouldn't feel. I just know myself, right? Like, guys, I had a S&P done, and I was done. The rest of my day, I went to sleep. I was tired. I was exhausted. I feel like I did so much. I ain't do nothing. We get S&P done. So me doing this, yeah, I would have to be. I need at least 4 days, 5 days after this. I'm gonna be down. I'm gonna be down. I gotta mentally readjust. All right, let's see what these prices. 6,190 and all this is included. That ain't bad. Let's break it down.
$190. Now, this might sound like a lot of money, but in reality, that's insanely affordable. When you compare the exact same procedure with getting it done in America with no travel costs, a hair transplant surgery will cost you anywhere between $8,000 and $18,000.
Yeah, there's no doubt that price is going to be very different. You know, cost of living is different. My education is different, you know, in terms of the cost of it. There's lots of differences. But what I'll say again is that regardless of where you go in the world or which clinic you end up in for a hair transplant, you want to make sure that there's proper strategy, that there's a discussion of how many grafts you potentially have over your lifetime to give and how many of those grafts are being invested into the recipient area. And is the hairline design properly done, naturally done? All of that is the most critical. As much as I know cost seems like, you know, that's what matters the most, it truly, you know, down the road, you can figure out the cost, but, you know, this is a permanent type of result, right? So you really want to make sure that it's done properly.
That price varies so much because it depends on how many hair follicles you transplant. Like I mentioned, Juan got 4,000 hair follicles transplanted, which is in the higher range of what is possible. I believe the max is like 5,000.
Even if you're going to do a 5,000 graft case, as I often talk about on the channel, it's much better to split that into two separate surgeries of 2,500 grafts, both for the way that the donor area heals as far as scarring, and also being able to budget grafts over time. You want to see the results of a procedure, especially a larger procedure, before you start to invest more grafts into the same zone or into a new zone. Because imagine you have one surgery that's 5,000 grafts. Now they've exhausted 80% of your donor supply. And what if little grows? What if, you know, you're not happy with the direction, the angulation? You're kind of screwed because most of the grafts from the back of your head have been used up. And I find that many patients that I meet who went to Turkey or other, you know, places, whatever, for a hair transplant, you know, things weren't properly strategized, you know, and so they have fewer options at that point. So get plenty of opinions when it comes to, you know, the hair work, and go with a place that you feel can deliver the quality and that you feel really cares about you as an individual, as a patient over time, not just like getting as much money out of you. You know, you don't want the primary emphasis to be on the financials, in my opinion.
The moment everyone's waiting for. Final review.
All right, real quick, because he said a lot there. That's when you can tell, you know, he's an American doctor that's talking about, you know, Turkey clinics. But what he said was facts, though, like, especially when it comes to making sure, basically, he said, no matter, you know, where you're going, make sure you have the right strategy in place when you're talking with these clinics, because you can use 4,000, 5,000 grafts in one sitting and you not like how it came out, and maybe it grows, but you don't like the direction of how it grows, or maybe it doesn't grow and you really want to get another one, right? Like the guy we saw last time. All of that being said, it's important to feel like you have some kind of relationship with the doctor. That's kind of what he's stressing, right? And without saying it, what he's bringing up and highlighting is that in Turkey, oftentimes they don't have a relationship with you past you being there for one day and them getting paid, which is why they're trying to, like he said, when clinics or when patients go over to Turkey, they don't, they get the most amount of grafts in one session, and the person's often just worried about how much money they're getting paid. like I didn't go to Turkey, obviously. Y'all know that because we're right here, right? But I've met with a few of them, and I'm telling you, as far as the money part, he's not lying about that. Like they, they're like, this is a good deal because of the money. This is a good deal. Like, but me, I wasn't just thinking about the money aspect, right? I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z as well, as far as everything else that's involved within the procedure and also after the procedure as well. So they couldn't just be like, oh, that is a good deal. Let me just go because of the money. That said, though, when you're no matter who you go to, you have to make sure that the right strategy is in place. And then also with these clinics, it is important in my eyes. If I'm about to get 6,000 grafts, or if they're telling me I need 6,000 grafts in order to get the results that I thought about and that I sent them, and so I'm like, look, I want to look like this. These are the results that I imagine. I told them the results. And like, yeah, you can get this, but it will take the 6,000. And they assured me that it'll be okay. No over harvesting. That's basically when the one area they taking too many out in one time. No, we don't do that. No over harvesting, anything like that. But beyond them giving you that peace of mind, you have to be certain of your own strategy to know, like, yo, even if they're saying that everything is going to be okay, I have to make sure that it turns out how I want it to turn out. So let me make sure for my own sake, I don't just do it all at one sitting just because, sometimes you can be so impatient because you're trying to, get it done. You ain't had a hair transplant done, at least in my own way, right? Like how I was thinking about it at first. I was all for it at first. I ain't gonna hold you up until that's what made me start going to different clinics. I'm like, yo, this is good. I have it all done. I recognize what made me be all for it. It was just the idea of having it all done. Like it's all done. I don't have to make that drive again or that fight again. I don't have to do any of that. It's all done. I'm good. And so I started thinking just deeper on it, and also listening to stuff like this, which bringing up the reality. Yeah, maybe get 2,500 done one time, and then 2,500 done after a few weeks, or at least a few months, maybe up to a year, to see how everything settled in and how everything is already growing, and that way you can see how everything else will grow in. So yeah, like bottom line is, guys, your hair transplant, it's not something that's just like a procedure overnight. It's art to it, and also it's like depending on how much your hair grows in, because especially when you look at, and we're going to be looking at stuff deeper, but look at like Deion Sanders, right? And a lot of people that have hair transplants, you can tell, but like with Deion Sanders, like in certain lights, you can tell where his hair transplant is thinner at, right? And I know, he's a football coach, whatever. Like, but I'm laughing because it's just me paying attention because I've been looking at the process as well. So if you're not looking at his hair that deep, you probably wouldn't even notice it. But like me looking at the process and looking into it, because he went from being completely bald, having no hair, to, having an illusion of hair. And that's what a hair transplant is to a certain point. Like when I get a hair transplant, the illusion of the SMP should darken up the hair transplant even more. And that way it'll look even more thicker, even though it's not as thick. But the illusion of the SMP makes the hair transplant, come together even more type stuff. So yes, a lot of that stuff out there. There's guys that get hair transplants and they're still using fibers for that exact reason, because it's thin, right? So they didn't have enough hair to cover it dense enough. So it was sparsed out, but it's not dense enough. So you still can see, some skin up under there, right? So all of that being said, let's finish out this video. But yeah, Dr. Gary makes some great points, and let's see what he has to say to finish it up.
Let me show you this guy's hairline, bro.
All right, bro. You ready to show this? Show them the hair transplant?
I think so. I think I'm ready to do it. Damn. Yeah, bro.
Did you see Doc's face? He kind of had my reaction. Look at Doc's reaction right here. Look.
All right, bro. You ready to show this? Show them the hair transplant?
I think so. I think I'm ready to do it. Damn. Yeah.
Hit him with the shoulder rug. Yeah, but that just goes to show, man, like a lot of times, because to him, this looks great.
Bro.
Look at that.
My hairline. Bro, yours is perfect.
Look, it look good, but a lot of times, guys, we are really our own worst enemy, and that's all this shows. We look in the mirror, we can see every small thing that may or may not be wrong with us. We can look at it and we can see it. We don't even have to think about looking at it or where it may be. We just look in the mirror and we see it. His hair wasn't that bad to Dr. Gary, who doesn't have any hair, to myself, who's thinking about getting a hair transplant. His hairline was, and then to a lot of people in the comments as well, they were like, yo, he really didn't need a hair transplant. But all of that being said, to him, look at his face. This guy's so happy right now. So, you know, forget what anybody else thinks about. Ultimately, make sure you're doing stuff for yourself is the biggest thing to take away from that. But also, you know, love yourself in your present moment, how you look presently. Because to somebody else, what you deem as the biggest thing in the world that you have to get fixed right away, to somebody else, it's not even noticeable, or it's not that big of a deal, or maybe they even like it, you know? So just, you know, be easy on yourself. Be easy on yourself. That's just what this shows, y'all.
Bro, look at that hair. That is 3 months of growth.
I like before and after, like I understand there is a difference, but it's not like, yo, oh man, like it ain't like that. What made this video so good, to, you know, be real, it ain't the transition. You know, some videos is just like, wow, let me see how the transition look. What made this video so good is all the production that the YouTuber put into it, who's not the person that's getting this done, but his brother. The YouTuber made this video, you know, as big as it was because it's great production and also informative.
The before and afters, I would do this.
Again, you know, I mean, this guy's 35. At 55, maybe he's gonna love that hairline. I don't know, but to me, it does look fairly straight across. You see also the density disparity between the area that was bare initially and then the areas that were more full
Yeah, but he got a few months
before the surgery. And so into those bare areas, you know, maybe he'll get additional fullness over the next, you know, 6 months plus, and he hopefully will, but there likely will be a density disparity there. So even though he's already had, I guess, 4,000 grafts, he probably will still want additional fill-in right here. And again, that might work fine when all of this hair is nice and strong, but to go. So you have to be careful with, you know, hairline work.
All right, y'all. At the end of the day, that was a great, another great video by another great reaction with you guys. But Dr. Gary Linkov, if you're looking to get any type of cosmetic surgery done, certainly check out his channel. I enjoy his videos. But man, I said, you know what I'm saying, let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like I said, let me know what you think, you know, how did the hair transplant turned out? And also if you would go to Turkey and get a hair transplant. All right. At the end of the day, man, you can be your own worst enemy, and also you can be your biggest supporter, but you'd rather be your biggest supporter, guys. You look in the mirror and people see, when you look in the mirror at yourself, you see something that most people don't even look twice at, don't even think about that they see on you. Try to see the positive parts of yourself that same way, guys, because there's something positive that you see that maybe only you see. All right. No, I'm joking. Hey, until next time, man, as always, you know what to do. Get the stepping, get the stepping, get the stepping.
Like YOLO wanted to tell you, accept yourself. You don't have to prove shit to no one except yourself. And if you